Hi, my class. It is Pam Turner, and I'm going to briefly go over the next upcoming chapters 11 and 12. We just did your homework on your last post is on chapter 10, and I will get those graded and responses, but I saw some really good responses out there. We're going on to talk about the psychological and the biological aspects of young and middle adulthood. I think most of us will find that the large majority of us fit in those sections there. Chapter 11 talks about the psychological aspects, some really good things in that chapter that you want to read. There's a lot of questions at the end that are on our chemical dependency and drug issues, and certainly those are covered fully in our drug and alcohol class, but just some really good information. So be sure that you read that. I'm not real sure why they put that in this chapter anyway. To me, it would have been more appropriate in the young adult class, or the teen chapters, but they did put it in here. That also talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's in the book. That's that chart where it's really important that we know that all of us have our basic needs met, whether it be food, clothing, shelter, that before we can do any of the other things, we have to have our basic needs met. And I like the fact that belonging is in there. We looked in the other chapters, it talked about gang membership and people joining gangs, and a lot of that is that feeling of needing to belong to somebody. The chapter kind of divides it up evenly. It gives you, there's a chart in there that talks about the importance of what era you're in. So it describes pre-adulthood at 0 to 22. So the law says you're an adult at 21, and we know that brain development says your brain really is not fully developed until you're about 26. Early adulthood is ages 17 to 45. Your middle adulthood is ages 45 to 65, and your late adulthood is 60 and above. So, and again, as I referenced that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is in the chapter. And the top is self-actualization. And that is what most of you are doing. You're actually able to do what you want instead of do what you have to do. Most of our clients are not clients that you'll see on that level. You'll see them where most of their basic needs are still not being met. One thing that's interesting is self-esteem, and you can't get to the top of the chart until you do one below it, which is self-esteem. So until you really recognize your own worth, and our clients recognize their own worth, they're not actually able to be self-actualized. So I use that lots in class, and that's an important theory to understand. I use it to explain to people why parents don't attend conferences sometimes. It is not that they don't care about their child. It is certainly that they just don't have it to give. If I'm at the bottom rung and I'm basically just trying to make sure my children have food, clothing, and shelter, I can't focus on my self-esteem, let alone theirs. They should be happy that I just fed them. And that's not being mean. That really is just sometimes where parents are at. So try to explain that to people who don't understand why parents aren't more involved. Because, most of the time my kids just want to eat, and that's where I'm at. Chapter 12, that looks at the sociological aspects of middle and adulthood. I'm going to post the questions later on today, so there will be 2 questions this week as well. And I'll go ahead and post the next 2 questions, so there should be 4 questions posted by the end of the day. Remember, you can only do, you can't do more than that. And we'll go ahead and post our Chapter 3 test. I'll post that up shortly as well. Chapter 12 talks about marriage and cohabitation and parenting. That looks at the importance of marital success. And there's a really good, in that book, a really good test you could take on the success of your marriage, predicting the success of how your marriage will be. I heard a really funny comedian the other day, and she talked about, that the divorce rate is about 50%. And where else in life would you take a chance that was only 50%? If you got on an airplane and the pilot said, well, there's a 50-50 chance that we might arrive at our destination, would you get on that plane? Yet so many of us take that marriage leap, and we pray that it works. The statistics for second marriages the fail rate is like 75%. So we're really also concerned about those. They just don't often do very well. But you'll read that chapter, and there'll be test questions on that one. So really enjoy that one. Talks about poverty. This one really is interesting. It talks about the cycle of poverty. And if you read that, you'll find that we believe in meritocracy. We as Americans really try to get out of the rut that we're born in, the generation that we're born in. And it's a lot easier than it sounds. Most of us will die in the same socioeconomic class that we were born in. Sad but true. That's just kind of how it happens. It's very hard to break that. If your moms are doctors and lawyers, or already gone through college, it's easier. But for most of my students, you're the first time that you fill out a FAFSA, and probably someone helped you with that. So you're changing that generation, those changes for your own children. But for many of it, it's very hard. The chapter talks about there will always be poverty, and if we go back even to biblical times, that there's a need for poverty, and sometimes it's just to make us feel better about giving back. There's the cycle in there it's on 201 in my book, and it really just kind of talks about you're a poor family with children, and then when you're a poor family, where do you live? You usually live in the very poor housing area. And when you're in the poor housing area, then you don't go to the best schools, you don't get the best education, and then are you pushed to go to college? Not often. So you can get in that same kind of McDonald's job, and you continue it. You move in right to the next apartment by your mother. If we can break the cycle anywhere, put some education in there, that changes the cycle for everybody. So congratulations to all of you for making sure that you are changing that cycle. Talks about meso, macro, and all the good stuff that you've learned about before, so be sure that you read that. iMessages are covered in this one, although we've covered that in the previous chapter. I'm just reading about iMessages. And by the way, most of you did a really, really good job on that post about iMessages, making sure that you understand that when you are describing someone's behavior, it is their behavior, how it makes you feel. And if you've, some of you posted that you've actually tried it with your families, that is really cool. It changes how we have a conversation. An example I gave before is if my husband comes home and I yell at him and say, oh my gosh, I've had dinner on forever, and I yell at him, he gets defensive. But if I say to him, when you come home late, I am worried. When his behavior, how his behavior causes me to feel, that is an I message, and really, really good. Really, some of our social standards are in there. I'm sorry, social services. It talks about divorce and the effect of divorce on children, reasons for divorce, and the consequences of divorce. So that's a really good chapter. There's an eco map and a genogram in both of those. I promise you will need those for other classes, so be sure that you understand the difference between an eco map and a genogram. That will be one of the questions that you'll have to figure out. I'll also probably ask you to do one of your own, so make sure that you read that chapter. That probably wraps it up on 11 and 12. Be sure that you have read those, and I'm going to go ahead and put some questions on there. Really, really interesting chapters, and you guys are doing a really, really great job. Message me if you have any questions. I will do a Facebook Live on Thursday, and feel free to ask me any questions about the chapter then. You guys are doing a great job. Bye.